on top of them very often.
It's harder.
That's sort of
It tends to be a lot harder, water.
Tends to be a lot harder.
Different minerals.
Doesn't have as much sulfur, doesn't have as much nitrogen. So you're actually somewhat fertilizing and feeding your plants when you're using rainwater. So those are other reasons why rainwater. So it's kind of a great example and just a really simple technique that if you saw it on more farms, on more sites, would go a long way to addressing a range of other energetic problems that can't be solved by any other means than starting to reconfigure how you meet water needs to not depend upon wells. And say, could we gravity feed it and catch it, hold it, and store it high in the landscape? This is one of our foundational permaculture principles that we use a lot, is catch, hold, and store energy high in the system and use it before it leaves your site to do as much work as possible. And so one of the ones is rain. So since rain is always landing on this site, we're looking at this and saying, could we catch, hold, and store it high in the landscape? And really I built this building with no real plan as to what I was going to house inside of the structure. I built this building so I could have water on site. This building was built predominantly with the goal to catch rainwater and have it at the highest point, store it in a big tank, and be able to gravity feed it. Then I knew, of course, I would use it to store the tractor and remay and other stuff, but the main purpose and siting and orientation of this building and its design is all geared towards gravity-fed rainwater supply on site. We've actually installed a system a lot like this for a client who has a site over in Sullivan County. It's about 10 acres that had no well, rural site, a lot of slope. And we walked on the site and said, I think you could, actually we walked on the site and told them, we think your property line goes 100 feet further uphill than you think it does. And they said, no, our surveyor says it's here. I said, you should find out, then I'll come back and do the assessment again. And they found out, and sure enough, it was 100 feet higher where we said it was. And so then we said, since it's up here, build a shed up there at that highest point, put in an 1,100 gallon tank in their instance, buried it, and then buried the water line from it, so that way they can use their water in the wintertime and the tank won't freeze. And they have enough drop on their slope that we could still bury the tank and bury the water line and still have gravity and pressure to where their container house, really bright orange container house that they built in the middle of an old farm field. And so I'm sure to the chagrin of plenty of their neighbors that are like, what is that? Whereas the shed we built looks like this, which in terms of local vernacular fits right in. No, none of the local folks are going to look at this and go, what is that? But a bright orange metal container house. Something to consider when you sort of land in a rural landscape and say, we're going to do the eco thing, and you have this notion that container houses are eco, and so you just sort of go with your, you know, set of things that are familiar, but it's good to kind of slow down and look around and go, what are the locals going to think? Does this make any sense in terms of local building vernacular, you know? So there's often a reason for it. Like things we paid attention to is, I was worried that this slope would be too minimal, but it's just enough to not get too much snow load and have it collapse.